Classmate called the police, falsely accused her own class. Got expelled. Hello and welcome. I'm a 24-year-old female, but at the time of the story, I was around 19 and doing a professional course of goldsmith. This story is about a 15-16-year-old female classmate being an entitled jerk that thinks she is the center of the world and tried to put us, me and the rest of the class, in trouble for something we didn't do. Let's call her Jenny. Here's some things that you need to know about the school and the professional course for those who don't know how it works in your country. You may be wondering how a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old got to the same class. It's because my course is for those who haven't completed the 12th grade. Either because you just finished the 9th grade, you can choose a particular course for the rest of high school, or you just changed courses, or for whatever reason you couldn't pass the 12th grade, which that was my reason in another course. Either way, that made my class age range vary from 15 years old to 23 years old. We had a problem at the beginning of the year because there weren't enough students in others' courses to form a class. The minimum is 10 students. So, to solve the problem, the school decided to reunite all students for the others courses to the main course of the school, the Goldsmith one, until the others courses have enough students. Then, the students can ask for a transfer. So, as you can imagine, not everyone was happy, Jenny included, and she often complained about it. Right, Jenny. Let's just go to the context of the story first. Jenny was having a hard time with her boyfriend and wanted everyone to know about it constantly. I felt bad for her at first because she would cry about him, but then she would have moments where she would check out guys on Instagram and say she was going to hook up with them and that will show him boyfriend, and then continue to cry about him. SHW would also complain about the school, the teachers, her parents, other students for other classes, her whole life basically. Also, every conversation had to be about her and her situation with her boyfriend. Like, we get it, geez. I'm sorry that things aren't working out with him, but we heard it like 30 times in a single conversation. She also took a liking to me because I was nice to everyone, and to her too at the first week of school. I had no backbone back then, and she took it to her advantage. We had a classmate that lived very close to the school, so we hang out sometime at his place during lunchtime. Jenny always found an excuse to not let me go with them, even though I was invited. And even if I said no multiple times, I always gave up and go with her because I didn't want her to be alone, and for some reason, I wanted to be polite. I was a naive moron. Once, she took me to her apartment to show me something, BTW. She said she lived close, but we walked for more than 15 minutes, and I thought we were going to hang out. But nope. She forgot her keys to the mail or something and needed me to reach out for the letters because my hands are skinny and I have long fingers. I actually thought we were going to hang out at her place after that. But nope, we came back to school. So yeah, I've never considered her a friend. I was just being with her to be polite, but I really should have stayed away from her and hold my ground. Now, the story you were waiting for. What happened to have the cops called on us? In the first class of the morning on that particular day, the teacher was doing the usual call. When it came to one of the guys of the class, Jenny got upset. Jenny, oh no, don't say this name, teacher. Theashare. Huh? Why not? We all looked at Jenny, puzzled. Jenny, it's the name of my boyfriend and I'm mad at him. Just hearing his name makes me mad. We just stared at her. What? The poor dude just happened to have the same name as her boyfriend. What was that? But we all shrugged off, and the morning continued without any incident. At the end of break time, I was walking along with some of my classmates to our next class when we heard a commotion near our lockers rooms. Since we are all nosy, we went to check it out. When we arrived, Jenny was handing her phone to Mark, M20, one of our classmates, and the rest of the class was right there too. Mark listened at the other end of the phone for 2 seconds before angrily handing back to Jenny and tried to walk away. But Jenny was starting to get physical, and Mark was about to be it too. Just so you know, Jenny was around my height at 158m/5, 2 feet, and Mark was around 180m/5, 9 feet. So yeah, it's basically a Chihuahua barking against a Doberman. We all separated them, but the school was filled with angry yelling and the staff was getting involved. Jenny grabbed her stuff and ran out of the school. Apparently, she had an argument with some of the boys of our class because of the scene she made this morning. I can't remember what was the reason for what she did next, but Jenny slapped Mark in the face. Then she called her cousin, which led to the phone thing in front of the lockers. Her cousin was threatening Mark that he was on his way to the school and he was going to beat him up. I can't recall what Mark said for this to happen, but I remember my other classmates saying he didn't do anything to deserve a slap and a threat. When we all calmed down, the staff got agitated and something happened outside. We all went to the school entrance, and what do we see? Jenny talking to two cops. There is a police station really close to our school, so it was normal they came rather quickly. But still, we were all shocked when we saw the cops. Why were they here? We watched the cops talking to Jenny, then to our director and our main teacher and back to Jenny. We wanted to see more, but we were told to just go to class. Jenny's cousin never came as far as I know. Jenny came back at the afternoon break time. I was about to eat my delicious chocolate bread at the school bar when she just appeared out of nowhere. I asked her what happened for the cops to come, and she said to not worry about that. And you know what she did next? She asked to eat half of my chocolate bread. The audacity! I was so fed up with her, and I finally said, "No," very firmly and took my precious treasure and sat somewhere else. I looked to see her reaction, and even if she had her back at me, I saw a teacher talking to her with a concerned look on her face. I guess Jenny was crying, but I didn't care and ate in silence. She didn't come back after that. We got word of what happened to have the police to appear. Apparently, she claimed that we made a group chat on Instagram talking bad about her on back, and she infiltrated the group to get evidence, and we were all bullying her every day. We didn't do any of that. And soon, the police discovered that all of the account of the group chat was created by Jenny to get us in trouble. The school had enough of her and told her that while this incident would have her expelled, they won't do that but advised her to walk out of her own, as she wasn't welcome anymore. They didn't expel her because they wanted her to still have a chance to find another school that will take her in, since all of the other courses of our school didn't want her. I don't know what happened to her after that, and in all honesty, I couldn't care less. I just hope she got help, because she was really crazy. That got me thinking, now that I'm writing this story, if the group chat was already there with enough conversation and a bunch of fake accounts when she talked to the cops, then it means she was planning of taking action sooner or later. That was premeditated. Now to the next story, Story 2. How my family didn't pay for gooseberry bushes. Years ago, my family liked a guest house in a town which lives off tourists. It was family-oriented. It was nice, close to my favorite ice cream and a family-oriented restaurant we frequented. So yay. The owners were friendly at the beginning. But somehow each time a guest was leaving, there were fees for damaged property when no damages were visible. So some guests found other places because they knew they didn't damage the property. We stayed 3 or 4 times. Then the gooseberry problem occurred, and it was the last straw. Later, my whole family joked that we were naive idiots paying for imaginary damages when entitled owners demanded. And we were idiots, which was unfortunate. The last straw was when I was 12 or 13. There was another family, girl 15 and boy 10. I said, "Hi," and the girl almost removed my head. Because I was a kid, and she an adult. She wouldn't interact with me even if I kissed her shoes. Besides, she was from the capital, and I was a peasant. Her mom laughed so heartily at that, and exclaimed how well her daughter explained where that dirty peasant's place was. After that scene, my family never let me approach the whole family, not even to greet them in passing, which also made them furious, as they believed every peasant should greet them humbly. At the same time, kids were rude, and for once there was damaged property, including a broken window when both owners saw it. But they said nothing and never asked them for compensation. 2 days before the great confrontation, both owners told me to grab some gooseberries from a bush. I thanked them and explained I was allergic so much that I couldn't touch a leaf. Eating one means SB must call paramedics and pray they arrive quickly. Which is true, but with help of a doctor I can now touch gooseberry. Not eat, that part is tricky, but it's a huge improvement. So on the day of the confrontation we returned from dinner, and both owners were waiting. They started screaming and people popped out of their rooms to see what was going on. Every single bush of gooseberry was damaged. Broken branches, stomped and flattened berries, a very sorry sight. Both owners demanded recompensation from my family because they saw me minutes earlier breaking all the bushes. At this point, my mom and aunt protested because minutes earlier, I was in the restaurant with the whole family and the owners of the restaurant could confirm it. Not true. The owners knew it was me. Boy and girl were there, too, laughing and telling every person around how my family would pay an arm and a leg and we'd see. See? But what? Some back and forth, and I did something I shouldn't do being a kid. I confronted the owners of the house. Especially I asked Mr. Owner if he remembered how I had explained I was allergic. Before he answered, Mrs. Owner screamed at me why my lies should mean anything. I ignored her and continued asking Mr. Owner if he had to call paramedics when I flattened all the bushes. He looked at me strangely and asked why should he. So I explained that it was to avoid arrest from deering me by the way of preventing me from accessing medical help. People around got quiet when a kid talked mdur and also looked at me warily. So I marched to poor bushes, grabbed a leaf, and marched back to owners. I just held it, and an ugly red rash spread. Then I asked the owners if they want me to strip so they could see the same rash not present on my whole body. And please explain how I could have damaged bushes without getting it. Both owners babbled something. We had no idea it was so serious, some guests told them. But we had shown you rude kids damaging the bushes. Why do you blame that kid who wasn't there? And we went to our room. My dad went quietly to the restaurant, told the owners all and explained we couldn't stay. As we ordered meals there, he asked them to count everything and tell him how much we owed them. They told us to pay for next day as they already had ordered groceries for our meals, which was fair, but not for the rest of our stay, which was very generous of them. Dad returned to the guest house where we were packing. We went to the owners and asked for our bill for the whole 2 weeks we were to stay. And we asked other guests to wait to be witnesses just in case. Mr. Owner babbled, "There is no need." Mrs. Owner was angry. We even asked them and witnesses to check our room for damages. We left 30 minutes later and on our way home asked a doctor for help. He checked my arm, told me off very sternly and I was to avoid stuff I'm allergic to, plus take my regular meds, and we drove home. Every year we went to that guest house we called the owners around March to ask if they had free rooms in July. Next year we didn't call them. So in May they called us and happily told us how they kept our regular room so we could arrive any day we want to. They offered 5% off. So we equally happily explained that after last year's bad attempt at extortion we have found another guest house in town. There was some clucking and my mom ended the call. We never returned to that house. I have been to the same town several times. Because it is cute and with funny tourist attractions, just keep avoiding that one guest house. Next story, Story 3. Coworker thinks the PA system belongs to her. Remembered this story the other day, after said coworker started meddling around with it once again. Hope I don't make it too complicated or long. Lots of details, unfortunately. First, a little background. I work at an indoor pool, and we have an attraction that we run every 30 minutes. Due to the attraction being potentially dangerous, especially to elderly people, we have a PA system in place to ring a bell in the hall as a warning. Once the bell rings, our guests have 2 minutes to get to safety or leave the pool while we lower the water level. Now, the building is old. The speaker system is an old 100V system, and the original amplifier for it is long gone. So things are wired up a little hack-wise with the new, modern amplifier. This means every room in the building has its own channel we can turn on or off, but all are fed from the same input. Our boss is not a monster and knows things can get boring or exhausting, depending on the season, so they added a small web radio to the PA system, so we can have radio. And because we are all nice and friendly, we can also turn on the audio channel for the entrance so that cashiers can have some music as well. The only problem here is, though, that volume can vary a lot due to the way the system works. One zone has 15 speakers, while another zone only has 3. But the amp sends the same voltage to both zones, so one zone will have normal audio, and the next will be too loud. I think you can see where this is going. Now, that day the swim hall was full. People were noisy and therefore we had to up the volume for the bell to be audible to our guest. Literally what the system was meant for. Fortunately though, volume was fine for our little booth. So we had the correct volume for the hall and could still enjoy some music. Along comes EC, entitled cashier. She comes into our booth, complains that she's bored and turns on the channel for the entrance. We had that one turned off because the entrance has probably the least amount of speakers, so the radio would be quite loud there. So we slightly lowered the overall master volume to accommodate for it. Unfortunately, at this point, the radio is non-audible in our booth because the volume is so low. So when we rang the bell over the PA, we noticed you couldn't hear it in the swim hall at all. So we had to increase the volume and left it at that higher level. After the attraction ran, we were back in our booth, and comes EC and complains the radio is way too loud, and goes to our PA system to lower the volume. Now I want to mention I'm only 26 years old and she's in her 60s, but considering the hierarchy, I'm the one in control of the PA system since it's safety-relevant equipment for the pool, not entertainment. And I do take that safety equipment seriously. After we had elderly people drown because they didn't hear the bell. It's already too quiet, especially in here. You can't lower it further. I say, to nail down that the volume is, in fact, pretty low already and that I don't want it to be lower. So what? You have phones, you can make radio yourself, she says with that smug face. Which pissed me off. In our little booth, there is no Wi-Fi and we have no mobile data signal at all. Meanwhile, the entrance hall has a public Wi-Fi access point that she always uses to watch TikTok videos. We can also turn off your channel. You have a phone too. You can make your own radio as well. I say. She looks at me, pissed, and storms off. Later that day, EC went to my boss and complained that I refused to let her have music. My boss then reminded her that the company is not paying the royalty licenses to play radio in public, so she wasn't allowed to have radio in the entrance in the first place. Though we handle this pretty easy usually, since nobody is gonna realistically file a lawsuit over it unless it's too loud. EC recently though started pulling the same SHD, coming into our booth and lowering the volume repeatedly while we aren't there. We noticed after we rang the bell repeatedly, and every time had to increase the volume. Boss reminded EC the other day that the license for playing radio in public is about 2.400, which the company will have her pay as she is the one that turned it on. EC is highly entitled and considers herself to be higher in the hierarchy than me due to being in the company longer. That may be true, but the PA system is still not for entertainment purposes. It's my responsibility, and I'm not going to break the amplifier by increasing and decreasing volume over and over just because she's bored and can't be bothered to use her own phone.